God is present here and now, and in the awareness of God's presence. Let us pray. Father, Mother God, we give thanks for this opportunity to be open to the awareness of your presence in this moment, in every moment. As we breathe into this awareness, as we allow this awareness to dominate our thoughts, recognizing once again the source of our life, the source of our love, as you, in us. Expressing through us transforming our experience here and now. And as we look upon those in our experience who seem to have a need for the awareness of your love, of your presence in their lives, we hold them in consciousness. We see them lifted. We see them transformed. We see them healed. And for this opportunity to be the ministers of your word in consciousness, we give thanks. And so it is that together we say, Amen. Boing, boing, boing. It's been an interesting week. Troy's birthday was Friday, and Alexandria's birthday is coming up. And I have a tendency to actually not want to go shopping twice. So, how many of you are familiar with Nextdoor.com? Wow. Get familiar with Nextdoor.com. It's really an interesting website. It allows you to have connection with your neighbors in your neighborhood. And sometimes they have posts on there, you know, who's a good plumber, or I need someone to mow the lawn, or you know, work the garden, or I have a dog that I'd like to get rid of. Actually, I do have. No, I don't want Linda to hear that. Okay, and so you have the option of having notices sent to your email when someone posts on Nextdoor.com. So I had an email that showed up that said free trampoline. And I said, oh, that's cool. All right, we'll go take a look at it. So I went over and I took a look at it, and it was in good shape, 5 years old or so. And this fellow was moving, and he didn't want to move the trampoline. So he said, well, it's yours, but you have to take it away. I mean, I can't do anything to help you. You're just going to have to do it all yourself. I said, well, that's cool. So I actually asked Shannon and Jake if they wanted to have a trampoline. So Shannon took a look at it, and she said, yeah, let's do it. So I brought this trampoline home. Now this trampoline, in parts, may weigh 150 pounds, right? I mean, it's not very heavy. But I got it home, and it was sitting as a pile of aluminum pipe until Friday, which was Troy's birthday. So I assembled it on Friday. But we got it together, and it was so much smaller in the other fellow's backyard. We couldn't figure out where to put it. It needed to be level, and there was actually only one place that we decided to put it, but there, the trampoline was at about an angle like that, which provides one bounce, and then you're off the trampoline. So I had to dig some trenches, right? And I had to dig a couple of trenches about that deep in boulder soil. You know that it would have been easier to go shopping twice than to install this trampoline. But we got it in, we got it level. And the kids were absolutely elated. And so we had a bouncing birthday. Actually, the party was at Jump City. If you've ever been to Jump City, that's kind of fun. But we installed it, and I, of course, had to try it out, right? And I remember my days in high school when, I could do flips and I could do front layouts and back drops and seat drops and, swivel hips. And so I was doing all of those things, not the flip. I said, no, I'm not going to do the flip. And so I did a seat drop, and then I said, okay, now just rotate over into a front layout, right? And oh, God. I landed kind of, partially rotated, and I stretched this part of my rib cage. It kind of pulled the, whatever that is between the ribs, pulled that apart. And I was in such pain last night. I was falling asleep, and I couldn't turn over, and I couldn't cough, and so I took a leave. I actually woke up a lot better this morning, but it was interesting, and it turns out it was a great metaphor for the week. How many of you? What? No, that. Where are we? Come on. Did we? Down. That's what I thought, but it's not there. It is? It's above that? It's above that? What's it doing above that? Obviously, it's on me. So, we're in this free fall, right? And then we have the opportunity to bounce back, right? How many of us experience this free fall and land with a smile on our face? It is it's an opportunity we all have to respond with yay. But perhaps there's something about that we know that we're going to be back up again if we could just maintain our feet, but I don't know. Anyway, I'm sorry? Which child is that? That's Alexandria. I had to think. Where's the pictures of me rolling off the trampoline, holding my rib cage? Well, as you know, I have been working with, as you may know, I've been working with Unity Worldwide Ministries on this education project. Unity World Headquarters, Unity Village, said last year that they are not able to provide ministerial and adult education any longer. They're going to have the prayer ministry, they're going to have the publication arm, they've got the healing center and the retreat center, but they asked Unity Worldwide Ministries, which is the organization of Unity churches and Unity ministers, if they wanted to pick up the education role. If they didn't, then the education role was going to go somewhere else, so Unity Worldwide Ministries said, yes, we'll take it on, but it took them 4 or 5 months to figure out how they were going to do this from April until about September. And so in September, one of the board members that was a classmate of mine was assigned the project, And so she called me and asked me if I wanted to participate in the revamping of the ministerial curriculum. And so that was a great opportunity. I mean, it's the phrase about teachers touching the future. Well, indeed, we were having the opportunity to reshape how Unity educates its people in the ministries as well as the ministers. In addition, there's 22 million spiritual but not religious people in the country that are excellent prospects for Unity. And so in addition to the adult education and the ministerial education, Unity Worldwide Ministries had youth education already. So we now have cradle to coffin kind of education, right? But in addition, it is going to all be online, and so we are going to be able to reach beyond the fences of Unity, which we try not to have, but nonetheless there is a lack of awareness in the greater population about Unity. So we have the opportunity with this education transfer to have a very substantial impact on the Unity movement. So this was a great opportunity. I have very much enjoyed the project, and the assumption of the education responsibilities is having a substantial budgetary impact on Unity Worldwide Ministries. And as you know, budgetary impacts, adverse budgetary impacts, create situations where staff is going to have to be let go. So some of the people that have been involved in the project on the staff side got their notice on Tuesday of this last week. Yeah. So, I look back on my time when I was with IBM, and I'd been in the data center and working while I was in school, and then I went into the field sales division, and I was there in the field sales division for a year and a half and got fired because I wasn't producing as I should have been producing. Now, it wasn't a big surprise to me, but nonetheless, it had a significant impact on me. It had an impact on me because I saw myself as an IBM sales rep, right? I identified myself as an IBM sales rep. I saw that I was going to grow old and retire from IBM with all kinds of accolades or whatever, but nonetheless, I was an IBMer. And when I got fired, it was, oh my God, I'm not that IBMer anymore. Who am I, right? So it took a while for me to gather my senses about that question. But I remember distinctly the night when I got the night that I was fired, and I was handed a box to put my things in it so that I leave the building and leave my keys. I remember that night when I got home, I sat down and I read the book, or the poem by Robert Frost, The Road Less Traveled, right? And it was the beginning of my healing, that poem was. Well, we have these opportunities when we are in the flow of life, things are going great, and all of a sudden the faucet is shut off and we're on the backside of the faucet, right? We're no longer in the flow. That impact is something that we experience, from everything from I'm late for a meeting and traffic is horrible, all the way to, oh my God, my relationships have changed drastically. Divorce or someone close to me has died. So we have opportunities throughout our life to have a resilient response or not. And the resilience of being able to bounce back is a very, not just an admirable trait, but it is a trait that allows us to celebrate the changes in our life, regardless of whether or not those changes presently seem to be positive or negative. So that process of bouncing back is what I'd like to talk about today. The movie that came out, I guess it was 2 years ago, in 2014, about the fellow that was a high school track star. He went into the Air Force or the Army Air Force as a lieutenant. Was a bombardier on a bomber flying a rescue mission in the Pacific. Mechanical problems caused the plane to ditch. You know the movie, Unbroken, Louis Zamperini. He was on a raft for 47 days in the Pacific. 47 days, you know, that, I don't know how he even survived that, but nonetheless, he washed ashore in the Marshall Islands. Marshall Islands at the time were occupied by the Japanese, and the Japanese figured that the best way to treat this guy was through torture, and they tortured him for his stay in the POW. In fact, he was transferred from the Marshall Islands back to Japan. And when the war was over and he was released, he had a very difficult time adjusting to or dealing with his ordeal. One of the ways, in fact, he would say that the primary way that he dealt with it was he learned forgiveness. And forgiveness is a very powerful process. And it's unique for each and every one of us, how we forgive, how, you know, what do we do to forgive. But that was his means of healing, was the forgiveness. And I go back to that experience of being fired from IBM and reading through the poem, The Road Less Traveled. There was an aspect of that poem that allowed me that some modicum of forgiveness to start brewing within my soul. The process that we go through, though, is a process that can either hamper us, hinder us, obstruct us, or it can free us. And it really is a choice that we make as to which approach we take. Zamperini could have wallowed in his torturous experience and kept that up, remembering, having nightmares and going back and revisiting and seeing the picture of that soldier that was torturing him. Perhaps maybe he has a whole gallery of faces that he could revisit time and time again and just wallow in that experience. Or he could let that go. And letting that go can be difficult. It is something that each of us has to learn on our own. I had a call just before the birthday party. I was literally taking a shower, having worked in the yard all day trying to get the trenches dug and the trampoline set so that when Troy came home from the birthday party, he could see the trampoline. And I'd just gotten out of the shower and I got a call. And the call was from the chaplain at Lutheran Hospice. And he said, I have someone who just arrived and they've asked for a unity minister. And of course, my first thought was, well, who in our community is in hospice? And I couldn't think of anyone that had been in a situation where they were in hospice. or could have been in hospice. And it turns out that this lady was from Texas, and she had moved into town last summer because she had been diagnosed with colon cancer. And so her son, who lives here in town, wanted to have her close by. Well, she arrived in hospice on Friday, and so I said, well, I'll come down tomorrow, Saturday, and I'll visit her. I'm just headed to my grandson's birthday party. But his birthday party was at Jump City up in 100th and Wadsworth, next to King Soopers there. So there was a time when the party was kind of at a lull, and the cake and presents weren't going to be open for another 45 minutes. So I jumped in the car and came down and visited this person. And the point of this story, perhaps there are 2 points to the story. The first point was, when I'm honored to be invited into that final phase of someone's life, whether it be just for a prayer session or a confession. I mean, I have had confessions before. But when I'm invited into that final phase of life, it truly is an honoring to be in that situation, because the person's defenses are either very high or very low. And recognizing that she's in this stage, I asked her, I said, well, the time is nigh. How are you feeling about this? And she said, well, I'm disappointed and I'm scared. I said, well, yeah, that's fairly common reaction. And we talked for a while, and she shared her story with me. And it occurred to me that the meditation, the heart-space meditation that I often offer, it occurred to me that this was going to be something that she would really appreciate and be able to use. And so we went through that. And when we finished with that, I saw her eyes light up, because it allowed, the heart-space meditation is a focus on the love that you feel. For someone, whoever, has stimulated that feeling of love. And so the practice is to go into that feeling of love and just experience that feeling. And so we finished that, and I saw that her eyes had just lit up. And she said, I am so thankful that you came down today, because I had forgotten that. I'd fallen away from the teachings, and this was a wonderful reminder of how I can be. And in that experience of that unconditional love, which is the point of that meditation, in that experience of unconditional love, your expectations fall away. They fall away. They are irrelevant. Those expectations are irrelevant, because in that experience in the now of that unconditional love, there is no room for expectations. Furthermore, as those expectations are dissolved, the disappointments disappear, right? Because the disappointments are really the result of our expectations and the expectations that we hold. And so when the expectations are dissolved, the disappointments disappear. And furthermore, when you are in that feeling of unconditional love, there is nothing to fear. So this heart space meditation is a tool that we can use often, and whether it be from the slow traffic that I experienced going from Troy's birthday party down Wadsworth at about 5 p.m. on Friday. It took me from 100th in Wadsworth to 38th in Wadsworth. It took me something like 25 minutes. It was just chock-a-block. And that normally takes me about 15 minutes. So this process is one that we can use regardless of what's going on in our life. Boing, boing, boing. We get engaged in these situations in our life, and we get engaged to the point that we identify with the situation. We identify with whatever it is we think we are in that situation. Like I was an IBM rep. And so I got so engaged in being an IBM rep that when the life circumstances changed and I was no longer an IBM rep, I did not have that foundation of knowing who I was. That can be very challenging because we exist. We are present in our identity. And when we don't have our identity, we don't know how to relate. So it's important for us to acquire an identity that is not dependent upon its circumstances, that an identity that is not dependent upon role that we have, an identity that is not dependent upon relationships, an identity that is not dependent upon our wealth or our financial assets, an identity that is not connected with the world. And that can be very difficult because in our doing, we tend to take on that which we do as being an aspect of who we are. Well, this resilience is about identifying that which we are in truth. We have this response in unity. When we have a disappointment, we say, oh, well, it's all in divine order. Well, let's just call that what that is. That's metaphysical malpractice. It's metaphysical malpractice because it says that it doesn't acknowledge the pain that we experience while we are in that unknown land. And when we don't acknowledge the pain that we're in, we are dissociating ourselves from the reality that we're experiencing right now, right? It's all in divine order can in fact be a very powerful metaphysical teaching. But it's not about God just being oblivious to our situation and we are just running along the path that is defined for us as a rat in a maze, right? It's not about our circumstances being irrelevant. It's not about the pain that we're experiencing being irrelevant, but it is about an understanding that regardless of the circumstances, our identity has not changed. Our identity is still as a child of God, as an expression of God in the moment, as the harbor of the Christ, as we say in Christianity. This process of identifying as a child of God dissociates us from the circumstances, and it allows the circumstances to change without our feeling the adverse pain that comes from our identity being taken away from us. Because our identity then can't be taken away from us. Paulus talked last week, divine love in me, as me, is me. That is what that's about. It's identifying yourself as the expression of divine love in this moment. As the expression of divine love in this moment. And when we identify with that, then the adverse circumstances can be immediately addressed with what now? I was a fan of West Wing when it was on. And President Bartlett, at the end of the episode, his usual response was, "What's next?" So when we have these circumstances that have an impact on our lives, if we can look at that and honestly and joyfully, enthusiastically ask the question, what's next? then we are in a position to realize that the present circumstance has so many opportunities available for us that if we are able to address those opportunities and be the expression of love in this moment, then those opportunities will be not just available to us, but they will be wonderfully available to us. You see the difference? I mean, it's not about, well, I have to do this because I guess I don't have any other choice. And we can transform that to, wow, this is something that now I can explore. As I think about when I was fired from IBM and I had that period of, oh my God, I'm not an IBM rep anymore. That the effect of being fired from IBM was a very important event in my life. Not just important because it was salient, but important because it was a transition. It was a transition to the next path. And the next path happened to be, let's see, that was, boy, I can't even remember what the next path was. Oh, it was a software company. And so I moved into the software company, and I was able to expand much more than I was within IBM. I was able to acquire skills that I was never going to acquire at IBM. And I was able to add to the skill set, which allowed me to more positively engage the future experience. Because when I was fired from the software company, oh, I've been through this before. Oh, I know that this, I know this momentary pain. Well, I'm no longer a vice president of a software company. Now what am I, right? And then from there, I went into the work with a small computer manufacturer, a portable computer manufacturer, and I went through that process, and I was a district sales manager and director of marketing. And then when I was fired from there, you see, actually, I've had this whole history of being fired. And as I look back on my time, those were good experiences for me because I am a persistent guy, right? And unless someone kicks me in the butt and gets me out of an organization, I'm going to live and die in that organization. So that's not to suggest to you that you fire me. I don't want you to have that thought, okay? Just suppress that thought. So the point is, though, is that these experiences of dissociation has really given me the opportunity to realize that I am not that. And I'm not that, and I'm not that, and I'm not that, and I'm not that. And I can't remember how many times I've been fired, but the point is that I've had a lot of practice in dissociating from that which I am, which actually gives me the opportunity to more thoroughly understand that I am not that. I am. I am the expression of God in this moment. I am the harbor of the Christ. I am in this moment as I need to be. When I go through on Saturday night, usually Saturday nights when I select the hymns. And I had no idea what I was going to talk about this morning. I literally had no idea. I went to bed last night, and Linda asked me, well, what's your talk going to be about? And I said, it just occurred to me that it's going to be about resilience. But when I picked the songs, I did not know that's what it was going to be. It was about 5 o'clock yesterday afternoon when I picked the songs, 6 o'clock. And it was another 4 hours of gestation before I realized what it was that I was going to be talking about. And I looked at the songs this morning and put your hand in the hand, right? Spirit is talking. I release and I let go. All of those fit with this talk topic. And it's being in the realization that I am and identifying with that expression of God in this moment that allows us to be guided, not consciously, but allows us to be guided to what's next. What's next? Yay, what's next? Wow, what's next? Yes, what's next? We'll have our meditation. As we breathe into this moment and allow ourselves to rest. Rest. Rest our thoughts. And turn to our feelings. How do we feel right now? Where are the stress points in our body? What are we smelling? What are we hearing? What are we seeing? What are the thoughts that are moving through our mind right now? Attending to them, observing them, but not being engaged with them. Just pure observation. This practice brings us into the right now. This is right now. And as we allow this right now awareness, this feelingness to be what we are focused on. And as we let this feeling of love arise within us and focus on that feeling of love, it gives us the gateway to open ourselves to the wonder and joy of this moment, regardless of circumstances. Feeling that wonder and joy in this moment, right now. And for this experience, we give thanks. And as we come back into this time and space, let us come back sharing the words of the Lord's Prayer.